Well, hello, and thank you for joining us again for our Dear Lady Elect question and answer series from the book Dear Lady Elect. Again, we're available every Thursday night at 8 o'clock on YouTube and Facebook. Just plugged in Dear Lady Elect. And this is Judy Seligman and Angela Tarr, and I'm Deborah Ogden. And with that, we're going to begin with the 7th letter dated in February. The title is Submission.
Did we talk about submission last time?
We did.
I thought so.
We did.
I guess this is a subject we have to really understand as women. Because we did say that every time God addresses a woman in the Bible, it is in relationship to her marriage and her husband. And, you know, how she responds to him and what's her purpose in this union. And so it's an important subject for women. And since we're all women, and this is a woman's Bible study, I hope you have your ears on tonight. One of the scriptures on submission is Ephesians 5:22, where it says to submit to your husband as unto the Lord. Mm-hmm. So our submission to our husband should be the same way you submit to God. Mm-hmm. As if, and it actually can go so far as to say, as if he was God. No, my husband is not a God by any stretch of the imagination. So why would I submit to him as if he was God? Mm-hmm. And the reason is that God, in the government that he's established on the earth, not the worldly government, but the kingdom of God, he's established the husband as the head of the house and the head of the family. And he promises to the woman that if she submits to him, God, that he will govern through her husband.
That's right.
So we're not really submitting to our husbands.
No, it makes me think of the obedience as you seek the kingdom and you learn what pleases God and what our roles are. And when he instructs you, when God instructs you to submit to your husband, my obedience is to God.
That's exactly right. And what's wrong with a distorted view of submission is that women think that their submission and obedience is towards their husband.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But when it's towards God, Romans 19:11 says, whoever believes in him will never be ashamed, mm-hmm. or never be disappointed. So if you're trusting God, because God said, you're obeying God who says to you to be submissive to your husband. Mm-hmm. When you're trusting him, you'll never be disappointed. He'll never put you in a place that you're going to be disappointed. It might be hard for a time, but the end is going to be good. Mm-hmm. And I like the fact that God is responsible for our submission to our husband. You know, I think about my husband and the crazy ideas he comes up with, and I think, oh my gosh, what's going to happen here? But God's responsible. He's the one who told me to submit. Mm-hmm. So what my husband says to me and what my husband requires of me, God's responsible for my husband. And this is where, when I think I first learned submission, Proverbs 21:1 became the most important scripture I ever read. Mm-hmm. And if you don't know it, write it down, look at it, think about it, meditate on it. In Proverbs 21:1, it said, God can turn the heart of the king like he can turn a river of water. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And when I realized that God was sovereign, remember we talked about sovereignty, I think last week or the week before, that God's sovereign. He can do anything he wants to do. Mm-hmm. He's all powerful. He can turn the heart of a king. And a king, especially in the time that was written, they had the power of life and death over everyone. You know, it was off with your head and your head was off. But God, those decisions that king made were filtered through the hand of God. Mm-hmm. The decisions our husbands make are filtered through the hand of God. God can turn my husband's heart any way he pleases. So when I submit to God, I go to God and say, Lord, you know what Dan's idea is for us. If this isn't your will, turn his heart in the other way. And if it is your will, let him dig his heels in. And I'll submit to him as unto you. That is the definition of submission. You don't have to add anything to it or subtract anything from it. Now, because of this doctrine, let's look at the questions. Let's see what, now, the first one's pretty easy, and I just want, I answered it for you. But
I do
want
have,
to hear your words.
Exactly. I felt like I had different words
Okay.
for this one specifically, and then
Okay, good.
Why is faith in the sovereignty of God based on the basis of the doctrine of submission? Why is faith in the sovereignty of God the basis of the doctrine of submission?
So I wanted to add to sovereignty that the trust that you're putting into God's sovereignty is also adding that he is a just God, that there is a reason that he's doing this and it is deserved. And knowing he can do whatever he'd like, it just, I don't know, knowing that he's just was kind of that extra adjective I wanted to
I
throw
like
in
that.
there.
I
Yeah.
like that. Just and loving too.
Sure.
But his decisions are just, but they're filtered through love. He really wants what's best for us.
Right.
We think we know what's best for us.
And then it reminded, we talked a lot about being deceived.
That's right. And our husbands think they know what's best. But none of us do. That's why when you submit to God and allow him to govern to your husband, there's no reason to be afraid.
Right. Right. And I wrote that the reason is because understanding God is in control over everything. I can trust him with every aspect of my life, including submission.
Yes.
And that makes everything fall into place because, again, we have that order of authority.
And love.
And we're covered. And we're covered.
For everything.
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 But I think most humans like order. We're not into chaos and disorder
No.
like we see in the world today.
Yes.
And we can have that order in our home when we submit to God's order. Okay, the next question. Do you believe personally that God can govern through your husband? Angela.
Probably, I mean, yes, if you've been watching our series. But I think it does come down to that trust in God. I wanted to think about my process of getting there. And the first question you asked, like, you really need that solid, that you believe it and you do trust God. And then the second question comes naturally.
What would you say to a woman though that said to you, but you don't know my husband?
Which we probably hear a lot.
That seems to be the common question.
Well, I know a friend who is at every single situation, and she trusted the Lord in that. But no, his word confirms it. His word confirms it, and that's why he tells us in his word to submit to the husband who even obeys not the word.
That's 1 Peter 3:1, yes.
And we can trust him. Understanding that God is in control. Again, we go back to the first question. His love for us, his genuine care and concern for our lives is paramount. And because of that, we can trust him. And we can see him doing the work in our lives when we submit. It's real.
Yes. And the word submit does mean to arrange yourself in an order under your husband. And if that's all you could do was arrange yourself order under and not rise up, with opinions and preferences and whatever, because it's so easy to rise up.
With what we think is right.
Yeah.
So we think, or this will be better, or this will be easier, and it's us getting in our own way.
Yeah, and I think the
We
first
start to,
the first steps in submission are just that arrangement. Say, okay, I'm not gonna rise up. I'm gonna stay under. The word submission means to stay under.
And you know, when you say that, when a woman says, but you don't know my husband, and it's like, no, but I can pretty much understand where the woman wants to get in the way and take control and be in charge. And I can see why that woman would have problems submitting to her husband.
Do you know why? You know that kind of woman? Because we're all that kind of woman. We all want to take charge. We know what's right. We want to fix that.
We all
want
think we
this
know
to-
better.
We want it to be over yesterday. If they would only do what we said. So,
It's tough.
but God actually does have the power to turn the heart of King Husband any way he wants. And I've seen it. I've been married a long time. And I've seen bad decisions turn out for the good.
Right?
Maybe he didn't turn his heart. He just worked it for the good. I've seen him turn Dan's heart when Dan was set. He's going this way and nothing's going to change him.
Heels
And all of a sudden,
Yeah.
he changes his mind. And other times, circumstances would change his mind.
Yeah.
He might be determined to do something, but then the car broke down.
Right.
He's not doing anything. God is sovereign. That's the idea of sovereignty. And this is why, as women, we can submit to God and stay under our husbands, because God can control the situations and we can't,
Right.
even though we want to.
Well, I would think for somebody that says you don't know my husband, that they try to explain that they actually have the power. And we're speaking about winning them and getting into that position, but just taking them or letting them know how much power they really have. And it could glorify God even more because, you know, their husband was just so bad. But we all know they're just our loving guys.
Yeah, they're all made out of the same stuff, dirt. Okay. The last question for this session is, would a man's free will negate or void the sovereignty of God? Yeah.
No. No, because God is still in charge. He's still in control. He knows everything, beyond anything that we could ever comprehend. God knows the end of any road we're going to take. So whatever our will is, He already knows what the answer is. And we can trust Him in that.
And I think we hurt ourselves when we're not acting in obedience. So we could get there a lot faster. We could get there a lot more graciously. But we don't. And God still knows that end result.
Yeah.
I like we can get there more graciously. It says in the scriptures, a gracious woman retains honor. You know, so when we're gracious and humble and we want to, the grace that God has given us, which is strength in our weakness, we want to give that same grace to our husband.
Right.
And it makes us a woman of honor, a woman that's respected. Yeah.
And knowing that Christ is in us, He pours out of us. And
Yeah,
what better way than to pour it onto our husbands?
that's right.
And I love remembering Christ is inside them too.
That's right.
When it feels tough or harder to submit at sometimes. And saying when you're tugging with, we know the better way, just gotta be quiet.
And quiet and confidence. And
Yeah.
quiet and confidence is our strength.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you can love God in them and not necessarily them.
That's, if they're a believer, that's right, because He lives in them, and whatever you do to the least, you're doing it to Christ.
That's
Yeah.
right. Yeah.
So I think we have to remind ourselves,
I love that one.
yeah, that who are we talking like this to? Our husband or Christ in them?
Right.
What kind of honor do we give them? Okay, ladies, I think that kind of wraps up letter 7.
Yep. Thanks again for joining us. We hope that this has been a blessing to you and that you will be able to apply even these things to your own marriages, your own lives. Thank you so much, Judy and Angela. And we look forward to seeing you guys again next Thursday night at 8 o'clock on Facebook or YouTube. Be blessed.
Be blessed.